All right, welcome back to another Conquest Corner. On this particular episode, we are going to be doing a re-review of 2 units. Now, the reason we're doing this, I previously went through, at this point, I think I've done every single unit now for Old Dominion, in terms of discussing them, thoughts on them, all of that surrounding it. But when I did the last one previously related to Legionnaires, okay, sometimes they change a little bit of stats here and there. You gain a little something, lose a little something. That's fine. With the change they made to Legionnaires, Legionnaires essentially function entirely differently, in my mind, than the way they used to. And what their goal is and what you'd be using them for is quite different now. Also, because as of today is the day Cultists release. I'm probably not getting them for a little bit, but Cultists are now out. So that does mean we had to consider how they are versus the Cultists, because that is also your sort of cheap option for your characters, which is sometimes what we looked at for Legionnaires anyway. So for this one, I want to go back through Legionnaires as well as Praetorian Guard and take a look at, well, now where are they and what do we do with them? Keep in mind, if you're looking for any Conquest stuff to pick up, we do have a discount code for it. It's Train Kickers. It's in the show notes as well. Link there you can click on at around the, about the 1 minute mark. It shows up in the top corner. You can click on it. Saves you 10%, helps out the show as well. We do thank everyone who has used it and everyone who does use it in the future. Like I said, it's a great way to save some money on a great game and to help us out as well. So, without much further ado, I want to talk about these units. Now, we'll start with Legionnaires because that's the big one. You know what? Let's start with the fast one. The fast one we'll go through is Praetorian Guard, because Praetorian Guard is going to be pretty quick. All right, so yeah, we're going to start with Praetorian Guard because I think this is simpler. And again, I'm going to start with what I'm less of a fan of. So part of the way we're doing this is we're taking a look at the dual boxes and saying, if you're buying these boxes, which one do you build? Or maybe how much and all. I personally don't rate Praetorian Guard that much myself. Now, I will talk about an option that I think if you want to bring them, that kind of makes them work. But let's go through them quickly. So 160 points for 3 stands. You get move 5. Our classic clash hit 2, 5 attacks, 5 wounds. So they got the extra attack and the extra wound from standard Legionnaires. Defense 2, a little bit stronger. Evade 1. They do have shields, so they're base 3 if you're in the correct arc. They do have Memories of Old for a Bastion with a +1. So when Memories Old starts going off, when you get to that second tier level, they're essentially defense 4. If you're already stuck in combat, keep in mind we're not allowed to inspire, which means if you're at tier 3 or better, you can use memories both as a draw event and as a normal action. Remember, tier 1 you can use as an action, so you could just Bastion as an action if you want. But when you get to tier 3, you'll get your Bastion +1, and then you could do an action for another Bastion +1. So these guys can actually get up to defense 5. So they can get to be very, very good in terms of defense. A little bit less if they're in the side and all. And if anyone's neglecting it, that their evade is only 1, so that's pretty low. And a Vessel Terrifying, of course. Then they have a leader, so they get 6 attacks on the main stand. They have no natural buffs, as we see it here, to, having cleave, having, rerolls, anything like that. The best they get to is essentially hitting on 3s kind of thing if they happen to be inspired, either because of charging or you're high enough tier level or anything like that. Whatever other rules can get them there. So their output in terms of combat like that is somewhat middling. Now, it helps with the fact of terrifying. That way, whoever you're going against, the resolve is a little bit less. So, I mean, there's some figures there. A little bit better attacks than some of the other standard, 4s. The 5 wounds helps because you'll stick just a little bit longer without being overly difficult to heal. It is more difficult to heal. An Archimandrite now has to heal 3 wounds to get a stand back, which means you have to be at least tier 2 before that's going to start happening. But with Bastion and all that, this can be a unit that absolutely sits on objective and can be very, very tough to shift. Like I said, if you are still around at tier 3, then you can Bastion Memory of Old, essentially draw event, do Bastion on your action, and then swing at whoever you're stuck in combat with. You're inspired anyway. And you have really, really good defense that way. So these guys can be very, very defensive. They can be very tough to shift. Now, you're spending extra points for it, but works. Standard Bearer does cost some points here. Costs 10 points if you want to be able to get that little bit of extra movement and the reroll charges. Further points, you probably kind of have to. And they have 2 options. Dark Cenotaph. Dark Cenotaph means that at the end, if they're on an objective at the end of a round, if they're sitting on an objective, get a power token. Useful, expensive for them, but useful. The way I've seen them work well. So Dan does this, and it's the other way that I've thought about doing it, although I just don't run them much myself. Is with a Profane Reliquary. So what this does, it gives them Aura Death +2. Keep in mind, by rules, if your rule has the plus instead of the flat number, it stacks. So that's why their Memories of Old Bastion can actually be done twice, because when it does a draw event, you add 1 to your Bastion, which is currently at 0 +1. Then, if you do it as an event, as an action, my apologies, I might have said event, as an action, you give a +1 to the +1, you get to +2. So, Profane Reliquary gives them Aura Death 2. One option, I said, anyone can take them other than the Fallen Divinity. They take them at different spots, so the Archimandrite takes them as restricted. That's not where I would take these guys, because that means I have to take at least one of my mainstays, and then I'd have to take them as the extra. The only reason I would probably do that is if I want a mainstay cares unit, and I don't want Profane Sepulchre, which we don't have yet, or Moroi, or Bone Golems. But no, I mean, it would make you a lot more survivable. So if you're worried just purely about survivability, and this unit is just going to sit there and spend actions to get more Bastion, not a bad plan. So that could absolutely do something to that if you want. But me, no, I usually take Legionnaires or Cultists for Micromendrites. So you could do it there. Hierodeacon, yep. Hierodeacon doesn't take it. My apologies. Thought everyone else did, but Strategos I know takes them as restricted, and Ziliarch I know takes them, but as mainstay. So where I've seen them, at least the spots I've seen it, is with the Strategos. I think it works. It can work with a Ziliarch as well, but if I'm taking a mainstay in the Ziliarch, I'm taking it to be able to get Varangian Guard, which is usually what I want to put them with. I don't always run Varangian Guard, but this is the one spot you can get them. So if I want them on my list, that's where the Ziliarch wants to go. For Strategos, I tend to take them with my Nathati, but I could see if you want to take Cataphracti, but my apologies, they're restricted. So if I want to take Cataphracti, I need to take 2 things from this. So I guess Legionnaires and Nathati, or maybe with the Centaurs coming out, then you could take these 2. Well, like I said, where I've seen it is with the Strategos, although the same idea works with Ziliarch. It wouldn't really matter which. But the idea is you take the Profane Reliquary to get Aura Death 2, and then you take the Legio 1 Primogenia banner, which gives you Aura Death +2 to your regiment, which means now all of your stands in your regiment are Aura Death 4. So if you have probably say a 4 block, I'd say you'd probably want to be a little bigger than a 3. A 4 block, that could be up to 16 Aura Death. So I could charge in, hit someone, 5 attacks. I might not have cleave or anything like that, but I'm going to be hitting on 3s. 5 attacks a stand, 6 on the leader stand with whichever character I put in there. I'll get some wounds on you. Terrifying, so you're a little more likely to take some resolve hits. And then when you decide to go, I'm hitting you with maybe 16 or so Aura Death. You're going to be taking wounds from that. Then whatever's left, I've triggered, hopefully, depending on the round, I've triggered some of my Bastion. If at least once, so that way I'm essentially defense 4, and if I got into the trigger twice, I'm a defense 5 with no resolve. So this is a unit that if you're willing to pump points into, will really stick. And if you're willing to do all that Aura Death, they actually can have a pretty good output of damage. I faced one of this the other day with my Sorcerer Kings, and yeah, I was having spots where I didn't really want to activate certain units because I was taking a bunch of damage from this. So especially if you hit someone who doesn't have the greatest defense, maybe they're more offensive unit, and therefore they have less defense. Well, if I can pop a stand or so off of you, and I can get my buffs, really, really important. So I rate them that way. I feel the way I see Praetorian Guard. If you're not willing to invest points in them, I would go Legionnaires every single day. If you want a stronger bunker for your Archimandrite, sure. Although I'd probably just rather keep it cheaper, personally. That's usually why I do it. Because I think to run this unit well, I don't think you take a little 3-pack. I think to get something more, you're taking the Profane Reliquary. I think you might have the character in there with the other upgrade, if that's where you want to put them, to really get them to do something. Because otherwise, you're looking at, by the time you take the Reliquary, almost 200 points, 185, for a good defense. You're fine with resolve, but just base 5 attacks, not the best clash. And if they swing early, so if I swing before you can get it, you're on defense 3 instead. Or if I have a little bit of cleave, now you're getting knocked down more. They kind of need to go early, and they're not always the unit that is helped by going early. If it's, say, between them and my Bukefa League wanting to get into someone, I kind of want my Bukefa League to go there first because I'm more worried about them. So I do think Praetorians are better than they used to be. I do think that now looking through it, I have a much better appreciation for them. But if I'm, say, a new player and I'm buying a couple boxes, I'm going to be building Legionnaires, personally. You know, if I had 3 boxes of these, probably I'll build 2 Legionnaires for every Praetorian that I build. That's most likely what I would personally do. Because Praetorians, I would never see wanting more than the total of 6 stands, 2 boxes. Even then, I probably would only get to 4, maybe 5 stands. That's just me personally. I think beyond that, I think it gets into 1 being too unwieldy. Because remember, for aura death, you have to be in base contact with it. So if I'm running that sort of trick, then I'm really big. They're not super expensive, 45 points an extra stand, but you do start tacking on. If you want to take 3 more of them, you're going to start paying points, if you think about it that way. And the reliquary, and a character, and this and that, the other thing. So I think they can work fine as a little 3-pack of cheap. Go grab your objective, or go rush into someone and just make them stay for a while. You're more defensive, so you can hold people up while you score out in other spots, or the rest of your army moves forward. Or if you really want them to do work, then I think you have to take them as probably like a 5-pack with a character. And just, like I said, that character takes the Primogenia banner. So now you're at Aura Death 4, and you're dealing some legitimate damage to people. I've seen it, like I said, my own Sorcerer Kings when I get to Aura Death 2, and sometimes that's just enough. Aura Death 4 is legitimately problematic. That's automatic hits. We know it doesn't resolve anymore, but you're taking 12 to maybe 16 auto hits. Unless your defense is really great, you're taking enough wounds to probably lose a stand or so, which, if you do it right, might be enough to actually break them. Now they can't inspire, all of that. So you can get some good done with them, but I think you either keep them cheap at a 3-pack to sit somewhere, or you have to really beef them out. Because like a 4-pack, they're not really doing much for you. Without a character, they're not really doing, I don't think, that much for you. At least compared to what I could get output-wise from some of our other units at 3 to 4 packs. So I do think they're better than they were before. I do like them. I would never do more than 6 stands. I don't think you need more than that. I think you're spending too many points if you're trying to really beef out those units, or take a whole bunch of these units. And like I said, for where you're looking at it, where their mainstay versus restricted is the problem. You know, Ziliarch, mainstay, okay, yeah, you could do that then, but Strategos it's restricted. My Cataphractia, they're restricted there. For mounted, it's the only restricted, so if you're taking the mounted, you could just take a unit, little 3-pack. That's not a bad way to do it, because the Cataphractia become mainstay. Whereas, like I said, if you're taking the Archimandrite, it's restricted. That's not really what I want, unless my only other goal was cares, which is a legitimate play. So, overall, they're pretty good. They're not my favorite unit, but I'm liking them a lot more. And if someone uses them the right way, I think they can do them a lot of good in the army. Okay, what I wanted to talk about more then was the Legionnaires. Because Legionnaires, I think, have come into their own. Now that there's Cultists, there is another choice to make. So there's a little bit of discussion there. When I did my video talking about Cultists and the Assassins, we talked about it a bit, but I want to talk a little bit more. So, everyone but the Fallen Divinity takes them. Everyone takes them, I'm pretty sure, as mainstay. Archimandrite, it's a mainstay. Hierodika, I know, is mainstay. Both of the forms of the Strategos is all mainstay. And same thing for Ziliarch. Yeah, so mainstay for everyone. These are the ubiquitous units. So let's take a look at them. And like I said, they've changed a lot. 100 points. So they went down in points. I think they used to be 110. They were a little bit more. Move 5, fine. Our typical clash of 2, that's fine. 4 attacks, 4 wounds. Their defense is worse. Because I believe they used to be defense 1, but they had shields and phalanx. They've lost that. So effectively now they're defense 1 with shields. So they're on 2s. They can't get to the 3s and some of the other buffs they used to be able to do. With evade of 1. They have Force March, which means that their second move, normally your second move with a banner gives you +1. Their banners are free, but their second move gives them +2. So this unit actually moves 12 inches a turn if all it's trying to do is move. That helps you get to some of those objectives that are sitting close to the middle of the board, so you can really push for them. They have shields, of course, like we said, they're sitting at defense 2. Support 2 really helps them. And this is something, I've talked about this before, but it's something like when I was talking to Dan, when he was starting this army, that I explained to him and he understood why this was so useful. I'm not taking Legionnaires to fight. That is not their goal. They're not going to fight. So, or at least fight well. Yeah, they might do a few wounds to someone, but that's not what they're there for. They're there for scoring objectives, which means if I'm longer, it's easier for the opponent to get more bases in contact with me. So what I want to do with them is I take a 3 to 4 pack of them and I make them 2 by whatever. So they're only 2 wide and then they move back. And I do that because 1, they have support 2. So you're losing, I know, 2 attacks, but you're getting more than the 1 you would have otherwise. So you get a little bit extra. And if you get less good swings at me, I survive better because I'm only defense 2. I'm not survivable. So I want to minimize what you can hit. They're, of course, animate vessels and terrifying, all of that. They do have a leader, so one of their stands gets the 5 attacks. Isn't that nice? And like I said, free standard. 40 points for each additional stand, so it's 5 more points for the Praetorian, but these guys do start 60 points less. And they do have their memory of old. Their memory of old is that once it goes off, your regiment's command stand counts as 2 additional stands for scoring objectives. So that means a little 3-pack, if all 3 are on the objective, count as a 5. So that's an amount. Usually what you find, if people are trying to stop, say, your backfield objective scoring, they're usually tossing a light 3-stand unit at you. Because your 3 stands, their 3 stands, you don't get to score it. This little 3-stand gets to count as 2 extra. That also means if you do lose one of your, say, 3 stands, you're still at that 3. People still aren't necessarily beating you out. And if you end up taking a 4-pack instead, or you have a 3-pack with a character, you get a little bit extra. That also means, like I said, if you're running it as a 2-by, working backwards, so say there's a character in there, it's 2-by-2. That front rank, if that's all you can get to touch the base of the objective, that's still 3 stands. And if you can push up just enough to get 1 more, hey, now you're counting as 4 stands. You're taking it from the other light little things, not necessarily light unit classification, but light little things running around. More options. They have the Praetorian Reliquary. Don't bother. I think, okay, like anything, you can make an argument that in this very particular case that it's a cool thing to have and that it'll do you good. We have all played the game where the unit you're going against has a couple wounds left and your aura death, either you had or maybe didn't, but your aura death goes off and they just roll enough and you destroy the unit before they go and it wins you the game and all those wonderful things. But more often than not, if someone really wants to hit them, they're not going to be much left at the end. You're going to have a stand to maybe 2 stands. They're effectively gone, which means I'm spending 25 points, which is only 15 points less than a whole additional stand. I'd rather just get the extra stand. Dark Cenotaph, not a bad option this one, because this is a unit that's only goal is to go sit on objectives. So you get extra power if you're sitting on objectives. Again, you're not super survivable, but a lot of these missions have a decent amount of objectives. That means you can sit on a more backfield objective and just start racking up the power. My goal when I play them is I really want to be tier 2 by turn 4 at the latest. If I'm doing this with a Hierodeacon Deacon and all of that, I will be there. Because I'll essentially have a Blasphemous Soma each round. I'll have a Hierodeacon Deacon, have a Hierodeacon Deacon spell, and this. That means essentially I'm getting let me make sure I did that right. Yeah. The natural power, kill a stand, this, and did I count one too many? No, I didn't. So yeah, it's Blasphemous Soma, this ability, Hierodeacon Deacon spell, Hierodeacon Deacon kill a stand. So that's 4 around. That means, knowing that something started turn 1, because now the Blasphemous Soma starts without your unit being on the board. That means really by somewhere in turn 3, I'm at tier 2. That's really what I want. And that's assuming your opponent hasn't actually done anything to you. So, Dark Cenotaph I like for that 20-point upgrade. Acolyte, No, I'm not worried about the spells. I don't think that's really doing me any good. And Optio, you do get the extra move. You get the Vanguard, but I'd rather the Cenotaph to get the power from it. You know, you can't score turn 1 anyway. You come in turn 2, or some of them come in turn 2. Depending on the objective placement, I'm on the objectives by turn 3. I find that because of that extra move, essentially their 12-inch move, if all they do is move, and again, I'm not worried about their fighting, that's not what I took them for, that's 24 inches by the time they come in, even if I didn't come in from the side, which maybe got me a little further, or a better position, but that's 24 inches, I'm touching most of the objectives I care about, because these guys are not rushing across onto the enemy side. They want to hit whatever objectives are the most out of the way, most far back. And if I take that Dark Cenotaph, that means if they're in the back and kind of out of the way, they're getting me extra. They're getting me points. They're getting me power. All the things that they could want. And if you want to commit to come and get them, then you might be getting yourself out of the way. And when you take them down, I get a little more power for each one of these. Because you take out, say, 3 stands, I get 3 power for it instead. So if I'm taking an upgrade, I'm taking the Cenotaph. I don't think the Reliquary gives you enough. I don't think the Acolyte does enough for you. And the Optio, the move is nice, but they're less survivable. I don't want them close, or at least not early. So what do Legionnaires do? Legionnaires score points. Legionnaires score points and they escort. So my Archimandrite comes with a unit of Legionnaires. Like I said, I could see if you want to take the Praetorians, if you really want to make sure you survive. But my Archimandrite comes with a unit of Legionnaires because it's cheaper and they can score. And that's a unit that I said I'll do it by 2x2 or 2x3, going back, depending on how many I take. I get just close enough to be able to do my spells, and I sit on objectives. That's what this unit does. I do the same thing currently with my Hierodeacon. When we talk about spells, let's talk about those very briefly. Hazardly Touch, obviously, you can heal back stands. This is a very easy one to heal back. You can heal it back starting round 2. I know they're not on round 1, but essentially you're starting round 2 because you have to heal back half. And if you're using Hierodeacon to destroy a stand, you heal the stand back, you're in good shape. Dark Immolation obviously is... that's the Aura of Death. That's fine. I'd rather that on a unit that already has some Aura of Death to get up to 5, because getting up to 5 is very, very strong. Blasphemous Power. Count someone else at the level. If I have no other targets, I don't mind counting myself, because then I can get my Memory of Old automatically. In the Memory of Old, now I count as a few extra stands if that matters. Or on Holy Baptism, it's a 12-inch attack, so I just want to try to get within 12 inches of some opponents. Something to swing at. And if you're 12 inches of a side objective, someone's going to be... if you're on a side objective, someone's going to be within 12 inches. So you'll be able to get some attacks onto someone. When we take a look at Hierodeacon, none of its powers actually help. Yeah, because that's for those. The Benediction is for brutes. You're not a brute. The other two don't. But this is a great unit for Dark Shepherd to go on to. So kill a stand of this unit. Archimandrite maybe heals it back up. But you kill a stand. Even if you're taking one off of the stand that's sitting back and grabbing objectives, that's actually useful as well, because you can slowly start popping one of them off. And I'm still taking the objective. My command stand is still there with Dark Cenotaph, so I'm still getting power from that. So I can really maximize over a few turns how much power I get out of this. And then it also has an attack at 12 inches, so you can get out to 12. I have in the past taken it with Ziliarch, but the Ziliarch doesn't go there. That's just the mainstay option, so that way I can get to my Varangian Guard. Yes, I know there's the banner that you can take, so you don't have to take a mainstay instead, but that's like 40 points. I'd rather just take the extra 60 and get a nice little tiny scoring unit that both gives me power if you destroy it, becomes a nuisance, you're going to have to deal with it, or I'm just going to be able to score a little bit easier than your small units as well. And for 100 points, that's worth it to me. So I'll take a unit of Legionnaires, and then he'll go in the Varangian Guard. Strategos, you could do the same thing. If you're taking the Foot Strategos, that was sometimes the option I took, because it's cheaper than Athati if I'm just trying to get Cataphracti. Although I tended my Foot Strategos would take an Athati unit so he could go into it. So, Legionnaires are very ubiquitous. Legionnaires you'll see all over the place. I think they're always a good call. I never see a reason not to have some Legionnaires. I do think now that cultists are out, when you take a look at things like your Hierodeacon, I think you now do have a bit of a choice. So when you think about the distinctions, it's about 10 less points. Stat-wise, reasonably similar, although cultists have a resolve. They have Oblivious, so they don't take it quite as bad, but they do have a resolve. They have Lethal Demise, though, so they're going to punish you for hitting them. And they do have a ranged weapon that actually can buff, my apologies, or a death. When you play so many games, I'm trying to remember which one was which. And your Hierodeacon has ways to make them count for your dark power as well and all of that. To me, the mainstay that I'm still choosing most often is Legionnaires. I do want to start messing with some cultists, mostly for my Hierodeacon, but that's probably about it. Like when I look at my Archimendrate, now my Archimendrate's going to go in Legionnaires, not cultists. My Archimendrate wants to survive. Cultists are even less. Legionnaires are better. Praetorian, as I said, you can make that argument. But cultists are good. I enjoy cultists. I've played them before, and I really like them, and I'm looking forward to getting some, depending on whenever my local store has them in stock. But I'm not swapping them out wholesale for Legionnaires. The only spots probably going, like I said, might be my Hierodeacon, so I can start getting power a turn earlier. And then the Hierodeacon can be targeting a different unit of Legionnaires to take down a model from. And then when it becomes time, I usually call it a she, personally. The Hierodeacon can cast a spell on the cultists to make them count. And then, boom, they go down. So I get power from them. I get power from the Legionnaires. I get power from the Dark Cenotaph. Your goal is to get up to, honestly, tier 3. If you can get tier 4, that's fine if you're running that kind of list, but I want to get to tier 3. The other part that's nice, though Fallen Divinity doesn't take them, if it's a Fallen Divinity list, that Dark Cenotaph can get you that little bit extra power, because it's empowerment pool of your choice, because the Divinity needs to get to tier 3 to make the list work. And let's face it, Divinity is expensive. The mainstays that Divinity takes are expensive, or at least the way I would take them are expensive, which means you need cheaper options. The Divinity is there to do the hard work and the hard lifting, and whatever mainstays you take. The Legionnaires are a nice, cheaper way to grab some objectives, so Divinity doesn't have to go and wait around. Divinity can just go and massacre the other army. The other units can go and do what they need. But also with that Dark Cenotaph, I can start getting some extra power. With Divinity, like I said, I usually bring a Hierodeacon to help up my abilities anyway, to be able to get my power faster. Do that, that'll get her to the higher tier, and then you might still, depending on time, be able to get part of yourself to at least say tier 2 for your normal dark power pool instead of Fallen Pantheon. So Legionnaires are great. Like I said, to me, I go 2 to 1. When I'm looking at boxes or taking them, I'm taking 2 things of Legionnaires for every unit of Praetorian, or in terms of purchasing, or taking in terms of lists. I do think Praetorians, if you run them where you're doing all that aura death, I think you can make that work. And I think that can do a lot for you. Otherwise, I keep them really small. And I keep them maybe as a stronger bunker. But if I really want them to try and do something, you're going to have to pump some points into it. Now, you could take any unit, and if I'm willing to throw enough points at it, any unit could be a good unit, of course. But I think you can get adequate out of them without having to go too crazy. You take those 2 upgrades, you put your character in there, an extra standard 2. So, I think that's something that if you get into, say, that middle important objective, your opponent's going to have a really hard time shifting you. If you can go before them, so if you can start getting your bastions off, but if you can get that, you can absolutely be stacked up in tanking. You can tank as well, honestly. You can tank better than a bunch of the Dweghome units. And with the Aura of Death, I can at least get some extra output onto you. But personally, it's just not necessarily my style. But I do think it is good. So if you're looking for something a little bit different, if you really want to start varying up what you do, I think that's a valid strategy. Otherwise, I tend to take 3 to 4 characters in my list, which means I'm taking usually 3 units of Legionnaires. I just don't take extra, because I don't have extra. I only have, I think 14 stands. I have at least 12, I think 14 though. I got some off of some people and things like that, so that's why I have some odd amounts of some of the stands. So, all right, but that gives us a brief review of these units, redoing it because they're different now. And I feel they're different enough to do another video about them and to update it because it is very, very different. And what they want to do is quite different. Let me know in the comments below. If you're listening to a podcatcher, you can't. But otherwise, you can go on YouTube, leave some comments below. Are you using them? How many do you take? Have you found other tricks for Praetorian Guard other than the one that I mentioned that make them feel worthwhile? Because if so, love to hear about it. Remember, if you want to buy anything for Conquest, we do have our discount code, Terrain Kickers. It's in the show notes below as well. You can click on the link there. You save yourself 10%, helps out the show. Lets you pick up things like Legionnaires, or if you're playing Old Dominion, it's about to get real expensive depending on what you want to do, because we have 2 different dual kits coming out. And as someone who plays that in Sorcerer Kings, like every pre-order matters, which means saving 10% is legitimately, using something like that is the difference between getting units. Because now when you're buying a couple things, it's actually buying you the next box and all of that. So if you're looking for anything, we have that code. It really helps. It helps you guys out, and it really helps us out as well. And like I said, we really appreciate everyone who does use it. All right, for other things you're going to see some other content. Not sure exactly when. I have a somewhat busy weekend. At some point, actually, I have to do work. And like I said, I might have a tournament on Sunday. I have to see how many people we get to come out for it. If not, I'll just be playing games of Conquest on Sunday, which I'm happy about. If it's a tournament, bringing my Sorcerer Kings. If it's not a tournament, bringing my Old Dominion. Unless there's Cultists in stock. If the store, when I go today, has Cultists, I might take my Old Dominion because I might build some Cultists and just kind of mess around with that and see what happens. I won't get them painted in time, but so be it. But as always, if anyone actually is from the New Jersey area, I mean, what hobby we do, I do try to run Conquest tournaments monthly to every 2 months. There's some other ones. Wargamers Guild does them almost monthly to every 2 months. And I know up at Rogue State Gaming, I know they've done one. I know they're looking to do more and all. So we have that. We usually play on Friday nights, but we do have tournaments. Our tournaments tend to be Sunday because that way it doesn't interfere with other people's tournaments. So if anyone's somewhat in the area and is interested in coming out, they always have that. Otherwise, if anyone wants to play otherwise, there's TTS. I'll play whoever on TTS just to get more games in. All right, but that'll do it for us on today's episode. So on behalf of everyone here at the show, have some good hobbying and some great gaming.